10:30 Mountain Time, 12:30 Eastern Time. So I am going to go ahead and get started. You are here at the Automating ABM with HubSpot session. My name is Mandy Thompson. I am the co-founder and CEO of Digital Reach Online Solutions. We are a HubSpot partner. And if you are connected with me on LinkedIn, you know that I love ABM. And if you're not, that's great. You're going to know after this how much I love ABM, and especially deploying ABM campaigns in HubSpot. And the reason for that is that we can automate so much so that we can scale and put our attention on the things that we need to put our attention on and allow HubSpot to do some of the heavy lifting for us. So today's session, or 6:30 p.m. Central European Time. Good call, Quentin. That is correct. We are here from all over the world, so time zones will be varied. I see Naomi in there. I'm sure that it is around the same time for you as well. So hello, Alex in San Diego, and hello, and I might say your name wrong, Ninad, but if I did, please DM me and let me know how I can say it correctly the next time. So today's session is going to be really fun. It's going to be fast paced. We're actually going to do live demos of how to build all of these things. So you do not have to worry about remembering exactly how to do all of this either, because the recording is going to be available in the HubSpot community, which Kyle, our lovely chat moderator, the master himself of the HubSpot Academy, he went ahead and pinned that. So you're going to be able to catch this session again later. And we have a couple of bonuses for you. We have a quiz so you can test your knowledge. And we also have on-screen tutorials that you'll be able to deploy inside of your HubSpot to build everything I teach in today's session. So if you don't catch everything, that's okay. We'll still be able to get you plenty of information a little bit later. And then if you do have questions, Kyle is going to be here and he is going to surface those questions to me so that I can answer those. And Pasha, it's nice to see you here as well. And Laura, ABM, account-based marketing. So let's start off real quick and talk about what account-based marketing is, okay? So for those of you who have not run an account-based marketing campaign before, basically when we're running an account-based marketing campaign, we're really focused at the account level. So our entire strategy starts at the account level. So what I mean is, if you want to market to digital reach, your strategy wouldn't start with reaching me or our other co-founder or our CEO or our COO or our director of client marketing. Your strategy would be to reach digital reach. And then you would map out, who do you need to connect with? Who is going to be on our buying committee? Who is the decision maker going to be? Who is the budget holder going to be? So rather than focusing on generating leads or demands through individual stakeholders at the company you'd like to reach, that's a part of ABM, but there's a greater strategy that focuses on the entire account. So today what we're going to learn, what elements of ABM can be automated in HubSpot? That's good to know, so you know what you can automate. And then you're going to learn how to automate those things in HubSpot and the strategic applications for those automations, so how you can apply it to your own strategy. But before we get into all of those things, I want to talk about what an ABM campaign requires, because we can talk about all of this today. I can teach you how to build all of the automations that you need to. But at the end of the day, if you don't know your overall building strategy and you can't organize all the information you need in an effective way, it's going to be hard to deploy those automations because it takes planning as well, right? And some of us, we're used to that. We build automations and we set up systems, work in marketing operations all the time. Other people do not. So let's go ahead and start about where would we begin before we start building those automations, because the automations are on the back of a great strategy. So first thing we need is alignment, right? There are several points that marketing and sales need to align on. And so we need to make sure we are in agreement on life cycle stages, when we're surfacing leads, when that handoff is broken down by our ICP tiers. So we need to get alignment between sales and marketing. We also do need a strategy. Just like any marketing campaign, we're going to need a strategy on exactly how our ABM campaign is going to work. And then we have to get into production. We have to make all the assets. We have to create everything that we need for that campaign. Then we have to build out those automations. Once we have the production and we know the strategy, now we go ahead and build. And then once we have done the building and we're running our campaigns, we make our optimization. So HubSpot helps you with all of this. Here is a sample schematic that we actually created for a client that worked through all of the operations actions that would happen in an ABM campaign. So starting with different audiences that were, in this case, surging with intent data. We're going to talk about that. What happens at top of funnel based on different actions that are taken, and then what happens middle funnel, where our intent data pops in, all the way down to getting that demo booked, right? So this would be a demand gen motion with an ABM, with an account-based focus, okay? So while this might look relatively complex, this is actually pretty simple. This schematic is only based on whether people are clicking in certain places or whether people are responding to ads or emails or not. We can get way more creative here, and we're going to get more creative in today's session. So really quick, what are the elements of an ABM campaign? And I would love to hear your comments. And if you have questions, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. Kyle is there ready and waiting to help get those questions surfaced so that I can get them answered. But what do we need with ABM? So I already went through kind of high level, but we need a strategy. After we create a strategy, we need a schematic. We need to build this out and understand visually how everything is going to move, because this is the best way to ensure everybody's on the same page. We've all been in that situation where we think we all agree, but then when it gets time to deliver the project, we realize we were not all on the same page. And then what we need to do is get our target account lists together. So we have to figure out, and our target account tiers, if we are going to have multiple tiers of our target account list. So a target account list is the list of accounts that you want to go after because they match your ICP, right? Your ideal customer profile. And then we can break those down by tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Then we need our audiences for targeting. So this is getting down into, okay, like I mentioned earlier, we have our buying committee, but who is the decision maker? And is it the same role or function all the time? Or does it change for our customers? So we need to figure out, now that we have the overall account, who in these accounts are we talking to? What assets do we need to create value, to hit on their pain points and start to drive that demand, right? So we need to get our audiences together. Then we need our content. We need our personalized web pages. We need one-to-one outreach. We need live content like webinars and podcasts. We've got to get everything together that people will be able to consume during our ABM campaign. Then we need clearly defined buying committee criteria. So how are we going to qualify someone to be on the buying committee? Is this going to be something that an SDR or an AE actually hears during a discovery or consultation call? Or is this going to be determined because we know that the CEO, the VP of marketing, or the COO are always our decision makers? So if we get any of those people activated in our campaign, we're going to go ahead and label them automatically. So decide what your buying committee criteria is. And then that handoff criteria, like I mentioned before, how are we going to move these accounts from the hands of marketing to the hands of sales? Now, with ABM, you should have a fair amount of time that they're in both teams' hands. So you need to align on exactly how you're going to work through the different life cycle stages and pipeline stages for your ABM campaigns. Then we do need to define our life cycle stages. HubSpot comes with life cycle stages predefined, but recently they did make an update so that you are able to set those and make them custom. So if you want to make them custom, go ahead. I do recommend using what HubSpot has set up already. All right, then we need assets for advertising and for nurturing. And then we need our intent data, right? Or other intent triggers. So if we're not piping in intent data from a Zoom Info, from a Bombora, wherever, from G2, wherever you may be getting it, then how else are we going to know that somebody is raising their hand? Do you have an enterprise hub where we can get behavioral events inside of HubSpot and we can determine it based on that? Are we going to score people with one type of score, a company score, various types of content scoring, so that we can determine when do we know somebody is interested enough to put that account in front of sales? Is it going to be, once we have a couple of people that we presume are on the buying committee engaged in our campaigns, we've got to make those decisions on how we're going to know that somebody is engaged and interested so that sales reaches out at exactly the right time. Okay. And then the last thing, a lead and company scoring plan, because scoring is very likely going to play a part of, it's going to play a role in your strategy, and it definitely should. Okay. So now, what can we automate? We're going to go over right now the list of what you can automate, and then we're going to jump right into those automations so we have plenty of time. So we can label our target accounts. This is a great thing. And here's what I want to remind everybody of, is that while some of these things may seem small, when you add them all up, doing them over and over and over again, automating these parts allows you to focus on getting that messaging just right, analyzing the data so you can really understand how these deals come together and update your marketing strategies, having good conversations between sales and marketing about what's happening at handoff so you can make those incremental changes to improve. And so while these automations, some of them are mighty, others are more minor, but if you get them all running, it's going to allow you to focus your attention where you want to be focusing it, which is on delighting your customer. So we can label our ICP tiers. We can move target accounts. So when you see TAs, that's what I mean, target accounts. You can move them in and out of targeting audiences for advertisements. We can label buying committee members. We can task sales to update target accounts and buying roles for the prospects they're speaking with. We can, we're going to learn how to score companies and leads. So company or contact scoring, updating target accounts based on intent. So whether that's through third-party intent data or intent data we're capturing inside of HubSpot. And then shifting content to a target account or individual based on their consumption history. So what do we mean here? This means that if you're serving me, let's say I'm looking at HubSpot as a product, and HubSpot is serving me Marketing Hub content, they're serving me Sales Hub content, they're serving me ABM content, they're serving me RevOps content. And let's say that everything I spend my time on is Marketing Hub and ABM. Well, then HubSpot could score me. I could have a higher score for those two topics than the others. And then in advertisements and nurtures, they could prioritize the content that I'm clearly enjoying and getting value out of. And if they do that, they're going to increase the likelihood that I'm going to purchase because I'm going to be more engaged. I'm going to have a better viewpoint of their brand because they're providing me tons of value and getting me exactly what I need. We can surface target accounts to sales based on score, buying committee, intent, looking at the pricing page, whatever you want that trigger to be. Suggesting content to sales. This one is so important for ABM campaigns because yes, marketers, we do a great job at using all of these amazing triggers and data that we get from HubSpot, from the ad platforms to customize our buyer's journey. But what is happening when we're handing that over to sales? Are we ensuring that that same level of attention where we're shifting their ad mix and the content they're getting nurtured, are we letting sales know the same thing? So that when sales is sending them something during the time that they're building up their buying committee to get towards closing that opportunity, can we get them the right assets to share based on what we know as marketers that prospect or that account has been interested in, okay? Then creating a deal based on your criteria for identifying an opportunity. So let's automate that deal creation at the right time based on whatever you decide, again, between marketing and sales for when that should be created. And then last but not least is sending offline marketing materials once we have an engaged buying committee or a high value opportunity in front of us. So we are going to learn how to do all of these things today. So now that we have kind of primed things here and we've set the stage for this, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into doing the building. So how this is going to work, I'm going to go over what one of the automations is, and then we're actually going to click over into HubSpot and look how each of these elements was built. So for this first one, labeling your target accounts and your ICP tiers. So we need to define our ICP tiers. That's a great question, Kyle. There are a lot of things that we can automate. So with that long list, here's what I would recommend. My recommendation is, since following this session, you're going to have on-screen tutorials that allow you to do each one of these things inside of your own HubSpot that we created over here at Digital Reach. And you're also going to have a quiz to test your knowledge. And there's going to be a recording of this. So my recommendation is to sit back and take notes on which things you think you can get done first, right? And consider what your actual resources are that are available on your marketing team so you know how quickly you can get through this. Don't set yourself up to feel like you have to build all of these things in 2 days. Maybe you can if you have the time, but just start to make a plan and start to, list out 3 things that you're going to do starting today or starting tomorrow to automate more aspects of your ABM campaigns inside of HubSpot. Okay. So for this very first one, the steps required, we have to define our ICP tiers. What do we mean by that? Well, what makes a tier 1 account for you? What makes a tier 2 account? What makes a tier 3 account? Is it the industry that they're in, the amount of revenue that they've done, how quickly their headcount has been growing over the last 90 days, 6 months? What is going to make you decide to prioritize an account, right? So define that. and then define what makes a target account to begin with. So we have our target accounts, that's the highest level of the hierarchy. Then we break it down into the ICP tiers, and then figure out, how are these target accounts coming into HubSpot? Are you pulling them from Sales Navigator and entering them that way? Are you using ZoomInfo or Bombora, where you have workflows set up to find new target accounts that match your ICP and then push those automatically into HubSpot? So figure out how your target accounts are getting into HubSpot. So the features we're going to use here, we're going to use the target account company property. We're going to use the ICP tier, which is also a company property. We will use workflows. So now let's go ahead and go live. We have a couple of different steps we're going to go through with this one. So let me go ahead and first things first, let's take a look at the target account overview. So what is this target account page that we're talking about? Well, this is what it looks like. You would see all of the accounts that had been labeled as target accounts, and you'd see how many contacts, open deal value, and when the last touch was. So we can go ahead and click this button here, and we can get an overview. How many contacts from that company have we been in contact with? How many internal stakeholders? How many deals? How many page views? This allows us to get a very quick view of how active these accounts are. So this isn't necessarily an automation, but I did want to show you where you could access this information and see how helpful it is. We can update the buying rules right here. We can get a holistic view of the entire account. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to look at. So the next thing we're going to look at is the workflow for labeling your target accounts. So this workflow is very simple. So this is a company-based workflow because we're enrolling companies, not individuals, okay? So first thing in the trigger, the company name is known. So we want to make sure that we actually have a company name. That's going to be one of our triggers. The other is going to be that the original source data for one contains any of ZoomInfo or Bombora, okay? So this workflow is set up so that anybody that's piping in from your system, that is your outside systems that are identifying target accounts and pushing them into HubSpot, so that we automatically label those. But let's say you do not have one of these tools. So what we can do here is actually just set our parameters for who would be a target account. So what are those parameters for a target account? Well, it could have to do with their annual revenue. So we could say annual revenue is greater than or equal to $20 million. So that would be one of them. And then the other one we want to make sure is that their number of employees is, let's say it is greater than or equal to 150. Okay. So let's say that all of our target accounts have at least 150 employees and at least 20 million in revenue. Then we'll label all of those as target accounts using this workflow. And then in the next workflow, we can actually break down and label their ICP tiers based on how much revenue they have over that 20 million mark, or how many employees over that 150 employee mark. And then the action you want to set is to set a property value. Okay, so you're going to look here on your workflows, and you're going to go to set a property value. It's going to be a company property. You're going to choose target account, and you're going to say to set that value to true. And that's all you have to do. I know that the same action is now there twice, but I wanted to go ahead and do that live. Okay. So now the next thing, how do we take those target accounts and then automate labeling them with the right ICP tiers so that we can get the right marketing mix and campaigns running? Because we might, for example, with the tier 1, because it's higher value, we might hand it off to sales sooner, or we might increase the ad frequency more when they're engaged because there's more value with that account. So depending on how you're setting things up, that is how we are, that's how you want to go ahead and build these workflows, depending on what your criteria is. So first thing we want to do, the enrollment trigger is that target account is true. So then what we're going to do is we're going to have our branches. So in this example, branch 1, we set up that the number of employees is greater than or equal to 100. And I know this doesn't align with the last workflow, but this is what I had set up previously. And total revenue is greater than or equal to $5 million. Okay. So then we see anybody there is going to have the action of that branch. The next one, we have number of employees is greater than or equal to 50. Number of employees is 99 or less. And the revenue is between 2.5 million and 4.999 million. And then our third tier is anyone with less than 50 employees and anybody under 2.5 million. Okay. So setting those criteria is super easy. There are so many ways that we can set this, and we can even decide, do we want to include records where the total revenue is empty? So I'm going to go ahead and say no to that one, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and save here. And there we go. Now we can see the different branches where we can now set the ideal customer profile tier, right? So what we do is in this one, we will go and do the exact same thing we did last time, which is to set a property value. And in this case, we're going to choose, oops, it's not ICP, it's ideal customer profile tier. And then on this one, we're going to say that it is tier 1. Okay, so now that will automatically set that. That's going to allow all of your segmenting to take place. Everything that you want to do to personalize the marketing based on ICP tier, you're going to be able to do that based on this automation. Okay, so go ahead and pop any questions into the chat. Kyle is here moderating, but I'm going to move on to automation number 2 that we're going to focus on in today's session. So this one is really fun. I don't know. I would love to actually hear in the chat whether you use HubSpot in this way. It surprises me when we get into HubSpot instances that are existing who have Marketing Hub Pro or higher, how few companies are doing this, because it's a really powerful feature in HubSpot because it allows you to adjust targeting based on CRM information, which gives us a leg up because our CRM has more information than our ad platforms have. So ad platforms allow us to shift targeting as well based on user behavior, but HubSpot allows us to do it based on user behavior as well as other CRM data, again, that we can't necessarily get into those ad platforms to dynamically act on. So this is where we are actually going to move people in and out of ad audiences based on actions they perform, ICP tier, whether they suddenly started surging and showing a high level of intent. We built the buying committee, whatever the deal stage has progressed, whatever that may be, we can actually move people in and out of ad audiences in HubSpot by using lists. First thing you need to do, you're going to see this as a common theme. We actually need to define the audiences for targeting. So that's the number one thing that we have to do. The next thing that we have to do is define our trigger events or qualifications for being added to or removed from an audience. So what is going to be the reason we put somebody in an audience or we take somebody out of an audience? And then we need to create lists for those audiences, because that's how we're going to do our list in HubSpot, is creating lists for our audience. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the features that are used. So we're going to use lists, we're going to use ads, we're going to use workflows, we're going to use smart content. Now let's go ahead and go live. We're going to create a company list for intent and create a contact list for intent. We're going to create an ad audience based on a company list, and we're going to create an ad audience based on a contact list, and we're going to add companies to the list based on intent, and we're going to add contacts to the list based on company intent and buying role. And then we're going to change the content delivery using smart content and those lists. So I know that's a lot of steps, but this one is really exciting and really helpful. So let's jump right in. First thing we've got to do is create that list, right? It's super easy. And here's the secret. You need to use a static list. If you're going to move people in and out of ad audiences, you need to use a static list. So please go ahead and remember that. Take note of that. You cannot move people in and out of ad audiences if you do not use a static list, okay? So now we also have the same thing with our contact list. We are going to go ahead and just set it up, no parameters. It's not an active list. You just need to make the list. So that part is easy peasy. All you have to do is you just go to create list, right? You go to create list, and then you just decide whether it's going to be a contact or company list. You select status and you go ahead and name your list. Okay, so that is step 1. Step 2 of this is to create an ad audience. So now what we want to do is we want to go over here and you want to go ahead and you go ahead to create an audience. Okay, so now what you would do is you are going to go ahead and say that it's based on a company list, right? So I'm going to go here, and I am going to get my tier 1 companies, and I'm going to choose our LinkedIn account, and we're just going to say tier 1, top of funnel. Okay. And then that would go ahead and allow me to create an audience. All right. And now we can see that we have another audience here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one so that I can make a new one here for this example. So now what I want to do is I also want to create an audience for, and actually I need to refresh that because it did not get my audience I deleted. So now I'm going to go ahead and I am going to create a contact one as well. So this one is going to be for our, let's see, oh yeah, it's our high intent contacts. And we're going to say high intent contacts, tier 1. Okay, so now we have these two audiences. So that's the next step, right? We have to take these processes. Oops, let me grab the ad account. We've got to take these processes step by step, and it's not allowing me to grab it right. Oops, it's not allowing me to grab it right now, so we won't make it, but that is how you do make it. So we created an ad audience based on a company list, and we created an ad audience based on a contact list. So now we need to add companies to the audience based on their intent. Okay, so here's what we would do for this. This is based on external intent or internal intent. So if the company score is greater than 100, or the drill down source data is from Bombora, because we would know that's our intent audience, we're going to go ahead and move these people into high intent ICP tier 1 companies. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that that is the audience that is being targeted with our high intent campaigns. And then what happens is when somebody is low intent, you go ahead and remove them from that audience. Okay. So now we're going to take a look at adding, we can do the same thing, adding contacts to the list. So just like we did with the companies, what we would do is in this one, we said, if you are from Bombora and your ideal customer profile is tier 1 or tier 1 plus install, and you're a decision maker, and you have a job title that contains any of marketing. That's how we know these are the people we want to target. So we would go ahead and add those people to that list when they have the high intent. And again, if that list is associated with an advertising audience, it's going to move them to that list. And then we just use workflows to add and remove people to those lists based on their behaviors, their level of intent. So if their score goes back down, then we can go ahead and move them off of that list. Okay. And then the next thing that we're going to go ahead and take a look at is how we actually change that content delivery, right? So the way that we do that is with our smart content, because, well, we can do it a couple of ways. We can do it with our smart content because we can go ahead and add a smart rule, and our smart rule can be based on the contact list membership. Okay. So then we're going to add a rule saying that if you're on the high intent list, then we're going to go ahead and serve you a different version of that content. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and save that. And now we're going to have a different version for the people who are in high intent. Another way that we can do this as well is to do this with workflows, right? So we can update our workflows for our nurtures based on the list that somebody is on. And then when somebody is, oops, 1 second, let me go ahead and do that. Okay. So then what we can do here is based on the list that somebody is on, we can go ahead and decide whether they receive this or not, right? So we can go ahead and say list membership. So if they're on the high intent list, then we're going to go ahead and serve them this nurture. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to settings, and we're going to go ahead with unenrollment and suppression. Is if somebody no longer qualifies for this workflow because they're no longer on that list, we're going to go ahead and remove it so that we can get them into the right nurture. So we can update our smart content. We can update which tracks of email nurtures and all other type of marketing somebody is getting based on the list they're on, taking them in and out of ad audiences, all of those things. So there's quite a bit that we can do with this one. That's a lot to unpack. And again, like I mentioned earlier, you are going to have something called an IORAD, I-O-R-A-D, that will give you an on-screen tutorial on how to do all of this. And you're also going to have a recording of this. So you can go through your steps, go through the features, and actually go live and practice all of this later, because I know it is a lot of content. Okay, now labeling buying committee members. This one is, let's see. Yeah, so great question, Shadab. So the reason we're using ad audiences as well is that when we're running an ABM campaign, our marketing mix is likely, very likely, if we're running demand generation as a part of it especially, we are likely to have content pages that we're using. We are likely to have ads that we're running. We are likely to have email nurtures and all sorts of other pieces of content that are going to be reaching our audience. We want to make sure we are as relevant, personalized, and valuable to our audience as possible, so that they brand trust. And so they build value and want to purchase through our company, right? So we want to make sure if their intent has changed, we want to change the ads they get. So we use static lists to do that. If they are going to have a higher intent or lower intent, if they drop on their intent, let's shift the emails that they're getting. Let's shift the content on the landing pages. So the reason that we want to use those lists, and the reason I say static lists, is because static lists can be used in everything. Active lists cannot. So go ahead and use workflows to put people on and off of static lists. It's easy to set those parameters, and then you can personalize all of their marketing and all of their touches to be in line with the tier that they are, the buying committee role they have, their persona, and the level of intent that they have today. That's a lot to keep track of. You might want to start with one of those and build up and build up and build up. But if you can start capturing and controlling all of those different touches based on exactly who the person is and where they're at in the buying process, you're going to see much better results come as a result of it. Okay, so labeling buying committee members. This one is super easy. So we have a light one following the last one. So what you want to do to start is figure out, do you know job roles or titles or functions that are likely to be a certain buying committee member? You might or might not know this, and this might have to be done manually by sales. And we have an automation to remind sales to do that as well. But let's say you know, let's say, like I said earlier, you know that the decision maker is always a VP of marketing, a CEO, or a COO. That's just always what it's been. Okay, so we know that. So let's figure out what are the job titles, functions, roles that fit with our buying roles. Then let's see if we want to actually label a buying role for everybody in our CRM or only the accounts that are labeled as a target account. So making that decision as well. So then the features that we're going to use are the buying role, which is a contact property, the job title and function, which is a contact property, workflows. So let's go ahead and go live. So let's go ahead and take a look at this workflow to label the buying role based on the buying committee, based on the job title. So what we're going to say to enroll someone into this is that the job title is known. But again, if you only want to do this for a target account and you don't want to do it for everyone in your CRM, then you would add another condition on a company property that target account equals true. That way we're only making this update to target account to contacts that are a member or associated with a company that is a target account for us, okay? So then what we're going to do is we're going to set up our if-then branches. So for our decision maker, let's say we know that job title needs to contain any of CEO, CMO, COO, VP of marketing, VP of operations, president, or vice president, okay? So we know those are always our decision makers. Then what we're going to go ahead and do is make that our if-then branch, okay? And then for our second one, we have our budget holder. So if we know it's always CFO or somebody in finance, and we might want to condition that further, right? So we're going to choose job title as the contact property and then contains any of these. So maybe with finance, it needs to say finance and director or head and finance, right? So I made this just finance, but you can be more defined if you would like to be. And so we're going to go ahead and upgrade that filter. And then the last thing we're going to take a look at is the influencer. So job title contains any of marketing manager, marketing director, operations director. Okay. So now that's our if then branch. We're going to save those. And then we're going to go ahead and set the buying role. So we're going to choose again, set the property value. It's going to be a contact value. It's going to be the buying role. And we're going to set decision maker. And we choose, are we going to append a current value or will we replace it altogether? In this case, we're going to go ahead and replace it, but you could choose append. We go ahead and do the same thing. And I like to do the good old duplicate so that you can just clone the action and bring it right on over and then just change which buying role it is that you're setting it to. So if it's not met, we're going to call the person a champion, not a budget holder. Sorry, champion. There we go. All right. So that's how we go ahead and do that. Super easy to do that one. Now we are automatically setting these buying roles. These are all lots of clicks, lots of minutes a day that are being saved for your marketing and sales team by automating these things. Now, requiring or tasking sales to update the buying role. So what does that mean? Let's say we don't have a clear cut, hey, the COO, they could be the decision maker, they could be the decision maker, the budget holder, and the end user. Let's say we don't know and we need to figure this out in discovery with our sales team. So what we want to do, determine who to notify if there's no contact owner, right? So that's the first one we want to do. And then do we have workflows already existing that are rotating contact owners to ensure you run your workflow for tasking the contact owner at the right time, right? So we want to make sure that if we're setting a contact owner, that we have some sort of delay before we're running this workflow so that we don't run the workflow before we have a contact owner and rotate it to the wrong person. So that is one step that we want to take. And again, we want to determine, do we only want to do this for target accounts or for all accounts? So do we want to make sales update the buying role for every contact they talk to or only the ones at target accounts? So the features we'll use are the buying role property, workflows, and tasks. And then let's go ahead and take a look at doing this. All right. So what are our triggers? This is our workflow to task sales of no buying role. So if the contact owner is known and the buying role is unknown and it is a target account, that's true. So these were both contact properties. This is a contact-based workflow. This is a company property, okay? So these are our triggers, very easy. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna create a task. Now, what we could do, another option to this is we could say that a meeting with a certain name in it, like discovery in the name, has occurred. So that could be our trigger. So our other trigger could be that we have let's go ahead and do this. So we have a meeting name, and we could say contains discovery. So this is another way we can do this. Okay, so meeting name contains discovery, and that a meeting end time is known. So now if we know that that meeting has happened, now what we could do as our other option here is to send a notification as soon as the meeting ends. We do this so that as soon as a sales rep gets off of a meeting, they go in and they add the information that we need from them to run our other automations. So this is another way that we can ensure we get this information from sales, so then we can trigger getting people into the right lists, getting them the right ads, and all of these other things that we've been going over here so far. Okay. So now we just got through number 5. Awesome job here. We are going to keep trucking and go on to the next, which is scoring companies and contacts. So scoring, it's interesting because I don't always think of scoring when I think about automation, but it's really a great automation, right? It's driving a specific numeric value that is being assigned to contacts or companies based on actions they do or do not take. So that is a really powerful automation, even if we don't always think of it as one. So what are the steps required? So we need our contact scoring plan. We need our company scoring plan. And this includes things that increase and decrease the score. So a recommendation I have there, this is my tip I recommend to everybody who's creating a scoring plan. Get a Google Sheet and go ahead and create tabs for one for all of your web pages. Create a tab for all of your downloadable assets. Create a tab for anything that your audience can interact with that you can track inside of HubSpot. And then, especially if you're wanting to make different content buckets for scoring, go through each one and have a column for what you think it shows intent of and how valuable, another column for how valuable that action is. And that's going to allow you to then create a great scoring plan that you can implement, okay? So the features that we're using here, company properties, contact properties, pretty simple. So we're going to go ahead and go live and just take a look at creating a scoring plan. So when you go in to create a property, you create a scoring property that can be done for contact or company. And then you'll see here that we can clone a score that we have to go ahead and build on it. And then we can also create conditions for our scoring as well. So if we go down here to the bottom, we can add additional criteria. Okay. So what we can do here is we can, if they have an associated deal, we give them 10 points. If they have 3 contacts with the buying role, we give them 25 points. If they have at least one deal associated with an amount of over $100,000, we give them another 10 points. Okay. And then if the activity is less than 7, if they have not had activity in 7 days, then we take away points. Okay. So figure out what your criteria is going to be for your scoring. And then we are going to use that scoring in the next step. So again, remembering that when we're setting up a scoring property, it's super easy. We go create a property. If it was company, we could do a company scoring property. So let me just go ahead and do company scoring demo here. And we go ahead and go over to next. And then we go down here. We make this a scoring property, and then we're going to build out that score. Okay. So we're going to add our criteria. Please notice that we have slightly different options here. So for example, we have our meeting stuff, which is great. So we can talk about meetings, we can talk about tasks, we can talk about overall engagement and all of those things, right? So we can talk about calls, we can talk about emails. So again, even though this is a company score, we can roll up interactions that we have, and we can go ahead and create our company score based on that. And we also have contact properties we can bring in. So we can also do this based on buying roles as well. So this is where we can kind of merge across the overall account. And I recommend that you do both types of scoring. And the reason is when you're scoring for a company, that can help your sales team to understand how active is this entire account. But if we have one prospect on that account, one decision maker, one influencer, one champion that has a really high score, even if that committee isn't ready to come together for that opportunity, we still need to pay attention to the fact that we have a very active person on that buying committee and start working one of our playbooks for building up that buying committee for the meeting. So having both of these is really important. Okay, so now on to the next one. Shifting content delivery based on consumption history and content scoring. So this is what I was alluding to earlier, where rather than just having a contact score and just having a company score, if you're HubSpot and you're marketing to me and I am getting into a whole bunch of marketing and ABM content, don't keep sending me Sales Hub and Service Hub stuff, right? I'm clearly interested in a very clear path, and you should be giving me content for that path so I can dig deeper and deeper so that I'm ready to buy, okay? So we want to have our overall score and our individual content scores, right? Like we can score someone on the overall score when they engage in that marketing content, and we can score their marketing score. So we have a quick question here from Shadab. What is best practice when it comes to scoring? Is it to categorize via multiple scoring properties? So yep, I think I might have just answered that. And I have Pasha's question as well. So yes, I do recommend having contact and company scoring, but make a plan for what you're going to do with each. Give it a purpose. So how are you going to set up a workflow so that if an individual starts to show a lot of intent and engagement and ready to buy behaviors, how do we make sure we're paying attention to the individual, but also keeping the account clear, right? Because then if I'm a sales rep and let's say I get, let's say the sales rep gets me coming through and it's like, okay, well, Mandy's score is 100. She is really engaged. Digital Reach's score is only about 25. Now, I, as a sales rep, can make a decision. That whole account is not engaged yet. Mandy's engaged. I don't have anyone else on that account with a score. So how am I going to approach my conversation with this prospect based on that information, right? So it can help sales make decisions, and it can also drive automation. And then to answer Shadab's question, the reason I think it's important to have scoring for these different buckets is to really, again, understand our buyer at a more nuanced level and to leverage more automation. If we know what they like, we can shift the email content with smart content. We can take them to a different landing page. We can show a different ad creative, take them to a different article that's going to create value based on their interest. And so whenever I do this, though, I make sure that the workflows account for, okay, well, if she has 100 on marketing, but she has an 80 score on sales, I'm probably not going to change the content that I'm serving because it's all getting engaged with. And this prospect is interested in marketing and sales. But if it's all going to one, let's not waste this person's time. Let's give them what's going to bring them value. Okay, great questions. Thank you for popping those in there. So when we're going to shift content delivery based on consumption history or content scoring, here are the steps that are required. Number one, we want to define what content consumption buckets or segments you would like. So figure out what's meaningful. And my recommendation here, look at your products. Look at the problems you solve and the pain points and what problems your products solve. This is going to help you to create content clusters that will align with these content scores. And then define how you will add and subtract from these scores. So what are the scoring criteria for that particular bucket? And then we need to create those lists again so that we can get that smart content served. So when people have scores of a certain level, then we're going to get them onto that list, and we're going to change their marketing mix, give them smart content, all of that fun stuff. And then we also need to make sure we remove people if the score's level. Let's say at first I was only looking at marketing content, looking at HubSpot, but then I found an article that talked about sales and marketing alignment. So now all of a sudden my sales score is just as high. So that would trigger, if I were on the HubSpot side of things, to start serving content that talked about ABM, sales and marketing alignment, revenue operations, and both marketing and sales hub. So we can use those indicators to make sure our campaigns stay relevant. Then we create workflows to deliver these different nurtures and campaigns based on content interest. So the features we're going to use are smart content, lists, workflows, and scoring properties. So let's go ahead and go live. We're going to set up our scoring based on content consumption. Then we're going to add someone to a list, and we're going to also talk about removing people. And then we're going to use those, we're going to use that smart content, and we're going to change those nurtures, okay? So let's go ahead and set up that lead scoring. That's going to be our first step. So we're assuming here we've already categorized our buckets. We're assuming here we've already lined out our criteria. So now what we did is we created a score for HubSpot content score. So for digital reach, we use this to say, hey, is someone on our website consuming content that's about HubSpot as a product and our services related to that? Or are they looking at marketing content that would relate to our marketing services that we provide? So what I would do here is if somebody has been, viewed a page with CRM in it at least 3 times and a page with HubSpot in it at least 5 times, we're going to give them 20 points. Now, is this what I would actually do? No, this is not our actual scoring. This is just set up as a demo. So you'd want to be way more in depth than that. But then I also said if they have interacted with an ad that the ad set contains the name HubSpot, that we're also going to add to their score. Okay, so this is just a very simple example of that content scoring. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add someone to a list based on that score. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say that when the HubSpot content score is greater than 50 and the marketing content score is less than 30. So this was a contact enrollment, a contact-based workflow, and these are our contact properties. You could also do this at a company level, although I recommend doing the content consumption buckets at an individual level. You could roll it up to a company level, though, to help sales better understand the problems that they need to solve for your customer. So, okay. So now we have our triggers set up. So now what we want to do is we're going to add someone to a list based on that score being what it is, right? And so then what we could do just the same is actually set up another workflow. I'm going to go ahead and go to this workflow, and actually, I don't have this one. One second. So then what we would do is just the same. If we wanted to remove someone from the list, we would go here and say if their score is greater than or equal to 30, then what we're going to do is actually we're going to remove them from that same list, right? So if their score changes so that marketing score goes above 30, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to change this action. We're going to delete this one, and we're going to remove them from that list, right? So we're going to have the action be to remove from, and we'll just say that exact same list that they were on before. So we want to make sure to set up those 2 workflows, one to add them to the list, and then if the score changes, we want to remove them from that list. So we're no longer, if it's for us, only serving them HubSpot content, we would also be serving them marketing content. Okay. So now what we want to do is use smart content for different lists. So just like I showed you earlier, we're going to go in here, we're going to click on this text box, and we're going to go in and we're going to manage these. And so again, we have that high intent contact. So let's say this was our demo list where we're showing people HubSpot content. Then again, we could change this to say HubSpot saves time instead of digital reach saves you time, or whatever it is that we're doing. So we can customize that content and make it aligned. So then the very last thing we're going to do in this step is change the nurture, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to say that if the list membership is any of whatever list you moved people onto in the previous step, so anybody who is on that list is going to receive the nurture that we have set up, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to send them an email. There we go. And then we would have our delay. Let's say this is a true nurture. We have a delay for a couple of days here. That might be a little fast, but that's okay. We send them another email. And then what would happen is in our settings, we want to set it so that we remove somebody when they no longer match the criteria. That way, once they're no longer on this list, we no longer send them these emails anymore. Okay. So that's how we're going to go. And you can also do that with active lists. So you can use that as well if it's not going to be used for advertising. But again, if you're going to use it for the ads tool, you're going to want that static list. Okay. So that's how we're going to use our smart content for different lists and change the nurture based on the list membership. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to surface our target accounts to sales. We're down to the last 10 minutes there. So for those of you in the audience, awesome job. I know this has been a ton of information. Again, we're going to have the videos, on-screen tutorials, a quiz, all of that for you to take this in so you can actually use this roadmap and build out your automations in ABM. So surfacing a target account, right? So we want to make sure this is that handoff criteria we talked about defining in the beginning. So we've got to surface that to sales based on the score, the buying committee, or the intent. So once you confirm, right, you need to agree on this, and you need to agree on it for a lot of different circumstances and all of your different ICP tiers. Figure out as much as you can, but also if you need to start simple, but then build on it because these handoffs are so crucial for the customer to have a great experience. What we need to do here, align on our handoff requirements. We've got to define when sales should be notified based on account and prospect activity and scoring, all of that stuff, formation of the buying committee, level of intent, all of it. And so the features we're going to use to do this will be our scoring properties, our workflows, our Slack notifications, and our tasks. So we're going to go ahead and go live here, and we're going to show you how to surface a target account when a buying committee member has a score of 50 plus, and we're going to also show you how to notify sales when an ICP tier 1 contact visits the pricing page. Okay. So first thing we want to do here. So now let's check this out. This is a contact-based workflow. So our trigger is going to be contact company property, target account is true. HubSpot score is greater than 50 for the individual, and the buying role is known. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and create a task for sales to go ahead and engage with that account. Pretty easy. And then the next one we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say if a page view has a URL that contains pricing within the last day, and the ICP tier is 1 or tier 1 install, and the buying role is known, we're going to go ahead and send a notification to sales. And of course, we could also send that notification in Slack if that's easier for you, Teams, wherever it is. Okay, suggesting content for sales to use. So this is where our content bucket scoring is going to come back into play, and we're actually going to tell sales what content they should use for somebody based on that specific score. So we need to define which buckets we want to focus on, criteria for placing a contact in a bucket. So we're going to use scoring, we're going to use workflows. So we're going to go ahead and suggest content for sales based on these parameters, which is super fun. Okay, so what we're going to do here, we're going to say that if the HubSpot content score is greater than 50 and the content score is greater than or less than or equal to 25, and there is a meeting booked. So the meeting name is known. Now we can also say meeting contains, and I recommend having naming mechanisms for your meetings so that we can use workflow automation throughout the sales process. Okay. So then what we're going to do is we're going to create a task, and we're going to tell them which content to use based on what that score was. And we might give them multiple options, and we might have a much more robust message than what I put in here for this demo. But make sure that we're doing this. Help sales out beyond that handoff. Have these workflows set up. If you have a long buying process and their sales is going to be working with that buying committee for 90 days, we still need to be personalizing and customizing the journey throughout that time. We still need to be suggesting content to sales and notifying them of the buyer's behavior. So we want to make sure that all of these workflows can include everybody, all of our target accounts, and all of our contacts related to them who are not in closed won yet. And then of course, you should have a full flywheel method and be marketing to these people after they have already closed. Okay. So now that we've done that one, we are actually on our last automation. Oh, second to last. I was joking. Create an opportunity when the criteria is met. So now what we want to do is define when a deal will be created, define what properties you will autofill, and define what properties you want to task sales with populating, and define your naming conventions for your deals. So we're going to use deals, workflows, our target account property, and the number of contacts with the buying role, which is the company property. So now let's go ahead and look at how we are going to create that deal. So the way that we're going to create this deal is our trigger is going to be that a target account, it is a target account, and the number of contacts with the buying role is greater than or equal to 3. Then we're also going to go with, again, We know that a meeting has been booked because a meeting start time is known. Okay. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a deal. So what we're going to do when we create that deal, we can choose any properties we want to copy over to the deal. So what you're going to see is that because this is a contact-based workflow, you're only going to get contact properties. So when you're creating a deal, deciding on the workflow type based on properties you want to copy is really important. Okay. So just something to consider. So we can also set some of these other properties. So we can also set values to properties that we can use tokens, but again, we only have contact tokens, okay? And then we can also choose what associations to maintain and what associations not to maintain. So that's important as well. And then we can also create a task for our sales rep to update this new deal with whatever properties they need to. So we would go ahead and tell them this right here. So again, just keeping in mind what type of workflow you want this to be, a contact company or deal-based workflow based on properties you might want to copy over. But again, if they're properties that are on the company, you could also copy those company properties using a workflow to deal properties so they deal. So it depends on when you're figuring out which type of workflow to use, the types of triggers you need, and how you need to condition various properties within the workflow. So I could do a whole session just on that. So we will stop there. Okay, so the last one for reals this time, setting offline marketing assets based on life cycle stage or deal stage. So this is one that I love. I personally, at Digital Reach, we use postal.io. They are awesome. They have tons of gifting options. You can send collections where you give people options to choose from. And this is especially helpful if someone's not allowed to receive a gift, because then they could choose like a donation to a nonprofit or swag, which people who can't accept gifts can usually accept. Okay. And you can also just choose a specific item. Okay. So that's super awesome. You can trigger all of this from right inside of HubSpot. That's very easy. So first thing we want to do is define when we want to send these offline marketing materials. And again, this might vary by the ICP tier. We might send certain things to tier 1 as soon as there's an opportunity, and we might wait till later in the process to send those to a tier 3. We might send them to decision makers and budget holders, but not to influencers. So we want to make those decisions, define which options you want to send based on which criteria. What is the dollar range going to be? What collection or specific item are you going to send? So we're going to use the target account property. We're going to use the ideal customer profile tier property. We're going to use the buying role property. We're going to use life cycle stage. And then of course you would need to use postal.io. I have created a video that is on our website on how to set it up from the postal side. It's under our tutorials and our resources. Today, I'm going to show you what happens on the HubSpot side. Okay. So we're going to go over three different examples. Sending a gift to a decision maker when they book a meeting, sending a gift to a budget holder when the deal is created, and sending a gift to all contacts associated with the deal when it closes. I've got 3 minutes and I can do it. All right. So here we have buying role is decision maker, meeting start time is known, target account is equal to true. So this is when we're going to send a gift when a meeting has been booked with a decision maker at a target account. And we could also add that parameter in here that we have the ideal customer profile tier is tier 1. Okay, so then for our next one, we're going to take a look at how to send a gift to a budget holder. So again, we're going to go ahead and choose the buying role as a budget holder, target account is true, and a deal name is known because we're sending it when a deal is created. So then we're going to go ahead here and we are going to choose which one of our gifts we're going to send from postal. Okay, and the very last one here, and I see a question there, I will get right there to that. As soon as I'm done with this last little demo. So on this one, our trigger, and these are all contact, just so you know, with postal.io, needs to be a contact-based workflow, okay? So we're going to say target account is true, deal name is known, and the deal has been closed in any of our three pipelines, okay? So that's our trigger, and then again, we're going to send a postal. So that's going to be to any contact that matches that, okay? And then we could also set it, that it's closed within a certain period of time if we just created this workflow. So we don't do that with everybody historically. So keep that in mind. But that is the last step, right? So we have gone through labeling everybody, moving people in and out of all of their different audiences and marketing flows based on where they're at to stay relevant, keeping everybody in marketing and sales aware and aligned of those actions, and then taking the right steps at the right time as the deal starts to form and move towards closing so that you can delight your customers at scale every step of the way in ABM using HubSpot. So Any tips to use campaigns tool with ABM tools in sync? Also, where can we find the IRADs? IRADs are going to be on our website at digitalreachos.com. They're also going to be where Kyle has pinned at the top of this, the community, so you can get them there. As far as ABM and the campaign tool, add all of your ABM assets that you have to the campaign tool. You can definitely use it there. And since you asked that question, Shadab, I will work on a next automation that has that information. But I think we are at time here. Thank you all, and I appreciate it. And have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of World Certification Week. I hope you learn a lot and get even more value than you are today out of your HubSpot instance. Bye.